Welcome everyone to Ask the Priest Live on Facebook. My name is Father Gregory Joyce. I'm the rector of St. Vladimir Church in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm the dean of the Pastoral School of Chicago and Mid-America, and some other stuff which doesn't matter. Let's pray now, and then we'll get right to our program. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Christos воскресе из мертвых, смертью смерть поправ, Иисусом во гробе живот даровав. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. Good to see that people are signing on. That's great. If you can let us know where you're watching from, that's always interesting to everybody else who's watching, and it's also interesting to me, I won't lie. It's nice to see when people are tuning in from various places. Of course, this is a show for our St. Vladimir Parish family. Everyone's welcome to participate, but especially during the pandemic, this is one of the ways that we can kind of reach everyone. We can be together, quote unquote, even if it's not physically. And so there'll be some St. Vladimir focus in the program, but there'll be some broader focus too. And we're looking forward to hearing from everyone. Now, this is live, so live means anything can happen, power can go out, whatever. But generally, things work out pretty good. If something happens, just stay tuned. We'll get right back on and we'll continue the show. Now, please ask your questions in the comments section. You can do that after the program is posted, and if you're watching it not live. I know there's some people that watch it not live. That's great. You can ask questions then, but you can also ask questions now. And as we go through the program, we'll first tackle the things that people have asked during the day today or earlier in the week, or maybe wrote at the end of last week's program. One of the questions will be from last week's program. But we also want to address the issues that you have today. So please feel free to post your questions. And I see that right now we've got Cincinnati on, we've got Toledo on. The great state of Ohio is being well represented, and we're glad to have you here, and Redford as well. All right, so yesterday was the Sunday of the Samaritan Woman, which is hard to believe because it means we're just blowing through this Paschal time, this time between Pascha and Pentecost, which is actually called Pentecost, but it just confuses us because the time is called Pentecost and the feast is called Pentecost, but it's 50 days, right, between Pascha and Pentecost, and that's why it's called that. So during this time, we are wishing each other good tidings of the Lord's resurrection. Christ is risen, indeed he is risen, and so on and so forth. But the time is drawing to a close, brothers and sisters. This Sunday, which is coming up, the Sunday of the Blind Man, is the last of the Sundays between Pascha and Ascension. And beginning with Ascension, we don't wish each other greetings with Christ is risen anymore. So it's going by fast, and we should take advantage of that. Reach out to the people that we haven't seen in church, because we haven't been in church, most of us, for quite some time. Church is open, but the public is not able to gather because of the quarantine, but that's coming to an end. Already our friends in the Upper Peninsula and in the Northwest Lower Peninsula can see that they're going to be released from the quarantine beginning at the end of this week, and that's great. And we're talking about how we're going to have services there and be able to begin to welcome people. I think that's also instructive for us who are living in more of the hot zone of the virus. Probably we're going to see something similar, I would guess in a week or 2 weeks, something like that, where small gatherings will be allowed, and we'll go to step 4 as well in the 6-step plan in Michigan. So anyway, that can be instructive for us, and we're happy for our folks up in the UP and in Northwest Lower Michigan who are going to be able to begin to gather a little bit more often with a little bit more people and to be able to serve the services together. So that's great. But as we always do, let's talk a little bit about yesterday's gospel. Samaritan Woman. Really instructive gospel, very interesting. Something we don't often think about is Samaritans were not considered by the Jews to be Jews, right? They were outside of the Hebrew race. And the fact that the Lord spent all of this time with this woman who was unclean from the Jewish point of view, according to the law of Moses, that helps us to see that the Lord came not just for the Hebrews, not just for the Jewish people, but also for us Gentiles. That she would be considered a Gentile outside the tribes of Israel, and I think that's a really important piece for us not to overlook when we read that gospel of the Samaritan woman. Nice long one, and we have a nice long one coming up for the blind man too, which is great. We don't usually get to have real long gospels read to us in the divine services, and it's nice to be able to hear that many words of the Lord all at once. So the Samaritan woman, it's an important gospel, as I said, because it illustrates the Lord's ministry, not just to the Hebrew people, but to all mankind. The Syrophoenician woman who is mentioned in another part of the gospel is an even better example, because she's just a flat-out pagan. I mean, you can argue about the Samaritans; they're kind of half-Jews, whatever. But not this woman. She was completely a pagan, and the Lord healed her daughter, who, of course, obviously was a pagan. And that shows to us that He came also for the Gentiles. So that's important for us, because that's us. That's us, and it's good for us to see that the Lord's ministry reaches out to us as well. Another real important thing about the Samaritan woman, and we talked about it a little bit in the sermon yesterday. The sermon got kind of messed up from the broadcast point of view. Right at that time, the weather got bad, and because we have satellite internet at church, it started to break up. Or maybe it was divine intervention. The Lord thought, you've had enough, Father Gregory, and that's fine too. If that happens now, when I start to repeat it, then for sure we know that that's the case. But what we see in the Samaritan woman is how the Lord is so kind of patient with us. He walked her through what she needed to kind of get through her issues. He met her where she was and walked her to the point where she was a believer in the Lord. And immediately she showed Christian love. As soon as she got it, she shared it. How? She didn't stay once she figured out what was going on. She left her water pot, which is like a symbol of her carnal mentality, and she ran to her friends, and she shared the good news that the Messiah was in the world right away. And what an interesting life she had. She catechized Nero's daughter. I mean, it's such an interesting life. She's a martyr, very interesting person, and her sons too were martyrs. In some places, she's considered to be equal to the apostles. She had a really important ministry, and so she took what she got, and she used it right away, but she didn't get it right away. And the Lord didn't just say, okay, forget you, just go away. He helped her walk through it to the point where she was able to understand what is Christ, what is the Messiah, what is Christian love, and right away she ran to her friends and told them about it. There's got to be some things there that we can emulate too. So in any case, a really good and important gospel, and even though it sort of marks that we're getting to the end of this beautiful Paschal period, nonetheless, it's a really important one. And this one that's coming up this week, the Sunday of the Blind Man, the last of these Sundays between Pascha and Ascension, also very important. If you're able to go to church, great. Please listen carefully. If you're not, please tune in, however it is that you do that, whether it's St. Vladimir's or elsewhere, and listen carefully to the gospel. Another one that will be very important. All right, this week's culinary fast is on Wednesday. It's oil and wine, and then Friday it's a fish day. It's the feast of St. Nicholas, the spring feast of St. Nicholas, the translation of his relics. The day before that is the feast of St. John the Theologian. So a big week. And the Wednesday is oil and wine, and the Friday oil and wine in moderation, of course, and Friday is fish in oil and wine as well. Now, the divine services at St. Vladimir's, except for tonight when we do Ask the Priest, we'll have services either every evening or every morning. You can look on our website to get the exact details. But I told you about the liturgies on Thursday and Friday, and there will be services on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and also, of course, on Saturday night and Sunday morning. So please have a look at that and participate as you're able by tuning in either to the audio live stream or to the video live stream. As we mentioned, I see that Father Alexei is joining us from Houghton. Houghton is and the rest of the Upper Peninsula is going to be stepping out of the quarantine, but we'll still be in it here for a little bit longer. As I said, my guess is 1 or 2 weeks. I'm hoping by the time the state of emergency is lifted that we'll also be out of it here and we'll be able to begin to work on that. But we have been actually working on it a lot, and today we published our sort of exiting the quarantine plan for St. Vladimir Church. It's on the website. It's on Facebook. You can have a look at that. It was sent in today's email as well. And it aligned with the state plan, because that's what people are going to be looking at and understanding what step are we at in the state plan. Okay, we go to St. Vladimir's plan. Okay, that's what that is. And, step 4 is this, step 5 is this, step 6 is done. So anyway, have a look at that, and please let us know if you have any questions. It's important that you have a look at it before we get to step 4, when we start to step out of the quarantine, so we know how we're going to worship. And it's definitely going to be like some sign-ups ahead of time. We just can't say everybody come back, right? We're going to have to physically distance in the church and stuff like that. So have a look at it so you're familiar with it, and that'll make everything smoother when we get to that point. Good. And on Sunday, again, we'll be offering to pick up Prospera and or holy water. We blessed holy water at the Feast of Mid-Pentecost. Still plenty of that left. A lot of people got water yesterday, and we'll have Prospera available and water as well. But it's really good if you let us know ahead of time that you'd like to have Prospera. Send in your names. Of course, we'll commemorate them at the Divine Liturgy, and how many Prospera you'd like. The last 2 Sundays, I commemorated a bunch of extra, and we went right to the edge both days. 2 Sundays ago, we ran out, but just in time. Nobody was deprived. And yesterday, we had 2 left out of, I don't know, something like 40. So please be diligent to let us know ahead of time. Send me a text, send an email, use the Google form, whatever it is, however you can communicate it to me, let me know so that you don't come to church between 12 and 2 next Sunday, and there's no Prospera there for you. All right, good. Let's see what else we have about St. Vladimir's. I think, oh, yeah, I don't want to forget this. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we'll use Google Meet to have a question and answer period about the quarterly stewardship education communication that we sent out about a week and a half ago. So that's on the website, of course. It's on Facebook. That has been in the email. Thank God we had a good quarter. The first quarter of the year. That was mostly pre-pandemic, but it was really good. Thank God for that. But we always have the opportunity for a question and answer period. Usually we do that at church after the meal on Sunday. That's not happening right now, so we'll do it via Google Meet. I see Father John Whiteford signed on. That's great. He was the one who turned me on to Google Meet. I think it's really super, and if you want to learn how that works, just go to our homepage. The schedule is right there, the Google schedule. It's right under the list of the saints. Just go to Tuesday, 8 o'clock, click there. More information, it's all there. So you can join either by a video call, or there's a phone number too if you want to call in. But it'll allow everybody to be able to ask questions and hopefully get answers from our stewardship education team. That's me, that's our Starista Jack Mitchell, that's our head sister Leta Nikulshina, and generally our treasurer Mikhail Fissinkov joins us for that too. And it's a really nice and interesting and I think useful thing. So anyway, and because it's on Google Meet, it's going to be recorded. So you'll be able to watch it afterwards as well. So that's that. That's everything that's going on. You can ask questions also if you want to before the meeting anonymously using our Google form. And that's up on the same announcement where we put the actual quarterly information. So look for that and ask questions there too if you'd like. All right, so last time we talked a lot of, well, not a lot, but it's not an insignificant amount about other religions, and that carried over into the comments afterwards, after our show. And actually, there was one that was posted right at the end. It was too late to get to it, so we'll look at that now. So the first question is concerning the topic on other religions. I'm glad you touched on that. What I have read is that Jesus appeared before John. This is John the theologian in a vision, as I quote from the first book of Revelation. The book says that Jesus told John to write letters to the 7 churches of Asia. Okay, so yes, those are specific, and they're listed. They're listed there too, which ones they are. I think the most important thing about Revelation is not me standing here trying to, do some kind of exegesis, which would probably not be, that great, to be honest with you. When we read the book of Revelation, we need to have a companion. I don't mean another person. We need to have something that we're reading along with that so that we're keeping ourselves, within bounds. That book, it can easily take us way off the reservation because we start to imagine things. And so it's one of those books of scripture that needs to be read with a companion volume. Archbishop of Erkis is super. It's out now. You can get it from Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville. There are others too. There's that Archbishop of Erkis was originally, if I recall correctly, was printed by St. Herman of Alaska Brotherhood in Platina, but that's way out of print. But there's a new one, relatively new one within the last few years that you can get from Jordanville. Highly, 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 highly recommend it because there's a lot of symbolism there. There's a lot of allegory there. There's a lot of things there that need to be unpacked. Sometimes we can just read the scripture. It's obvious, we don't have to go too deeply into it. That's especially true in the Gospels, which are pretty straightforward and simple. Not that we shouldn't read the Fathers. Of course we should. And it's good for us to do that. But, some things are more complicated than others. Revelation is one of those things that's very complicated and very much needs some hand-holding. and that's true of us clergy too. It's not like we are, can just read stuff and understand everything. We also have to have some a companion as we're doing that. So please take the time to do that. Ask your priest about that. Maybe there's something. Maybe Archbishop Baracky's book is already in your parish library. Maybe the old version is in there. But in any case, don't want to take off with that too far without having some companion. Okay, now another question. The question is, St. Luke was assigned by the resurrected Christ to make known Christianity in India, ? Actually, it's Thomas. It is St. Thomas who was in India. So just simple question, simple answer. Now, another question, I'd also like to hear about the life of Jesus while he was still in exile and his whereabouts. I think that's got to be when he was in Egypt with his family. So there's not a ton about that time in the Lord's life. It's covered very quickly in the Gospels. And generally, the way we understand that is if there's not a lot there, it means that there's not a lot that's necessary for our salvation, right? Doesn't mean there's nothing bad or something like that happened there, but if there's... Generally, the church conveys to us what's needed for our salvation. That's really true in the scripture too. And then if it's not there, then we probably don't need to know all of those details. I can't tell you a lot of details because we don't know a whole ton of details about the time when Christ was in Egypt with Joseph and the Mother of God. Sorry about that, but that's just the reality of the situation. As Orthodox Christians, we have to be comfortable with mystery. We do not need to know how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. Might be nice to know, but it's not important for our salvation, and therefore we don't need to know that, and we don't. And there are other things like exactly what was happening in Egypt while the Lord was there in exile during the time when he was being sought by Herod as an infant. We don't know. We don't know all the details, and that's okay. It's okay for us to not know everything. We need to know what we need for our salvation, and that's what we can find in the Scripture. Another question, and I'm going to ask people to start posting questions here because we're getting to the end of our questions and we're just getting into the program now, so I hope that people will have some more questions and we can talk a little bit more. Another question, how do you find who your patron saint is when you are coming to Orthodoxy, when you're being catechized? There's a certain point in the catechism process when we begin to read the lives of the saints. I think we talked about this last time. Maybe I even answered this last time. If I did, I'm sorry. When we begin to read the lives of the saints, for various reasons. One, the ethos of Orthodox Christianity is something that's really important for us to begin to acquire as we're being catechized. And I say begin because it's maybe even a lifetime-long process, but it's a long process. It's a decade process, maybe a little bit more minimum, for us to kind of really absorb that ethos of Orthodoxy. And some of that is just our persistence, our being in church, being surrounded by the saints, being in the service. It's being transformed. All of these things help us with this ethos. But reading the lives of the saints is very helpful for us in that regard. Not so much that we will exactly imitate what they're doing, but there are pieces there, and we begin to see patterns developing, and we begin to see how the saints think and how they act, and given a certain sort of input, then there's a certain output. And these things help us to begin to really acquire that ethos of Orthodoxy. And that's something that I think we continue to struggle with. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but reading the lives of the saints helps, and so we generally do that as part of the catechism at St. Vladimir's, and I think that a lot of priests do that as part of the catechism. And as you're reading those lives, then if you're kind of in the market, let's say, for a new name, then you may find a saint that you can really identify with, and that's really good. And then you can take that name. But I know that I've mentioned either last time or in previous programs, my personal feeling is, and it's just my personal feeling, so, I mean, it's essentially useless, but I'm just sharing with you, if your parents gave you a perfectly good Christian name, there is no reason to seek out another one. Just take it. Keep it. Don't get rid of it, right? I mean, I understand that there's this sort of not trend. I mean, you want to make a new beginning, right? You want something new and fresh and a new life. But if you've already got a perfectly good saint, if you're Paul, there's no reason for you to become Pafnuti. I mean, maybe if you become a monk, great, but it just doesn't make any sense. It only makes your life more complicated. So read all the lives of all St. Pauls. There's not just one. I mean, think of St. Paul the Simple. What an interesting life. And if you don't know it, then look it up. Very interesting life. And that's just one that pops off the top of my head. There's so many. So you're saddled with this name. Well, you're not saddled. Your parents gave it to you. So take it, look, see if you can find a saint that you can identify with and you can kind of take as your own, and then make that saint your patron saint, even though you're keeping the same name that your parents gave you. But if you got a name, I don't know, like grass or something. I don't know. You were born in the 60s. Yeah, you're going to need to have something new. There's no Saint Grass. No, not that one. So you're gonna need to have something new, and so then you have an extra added sort of motivation to read more of the lives of the saints. But I think it's good for you to also talk to the priest or the catechist who's catechizing you, because it is kind of nice if, let's say that, I don't know, you're let's say that you're a physician, okay? So you're a physician, and you have a name which is not a Christian name that your parents gave you. Okay, so maybe you're interested in St. Luke. He was a physician. Or maybe you're an iconographer, and you're really interested in St. Luke. Well, you're probably not an iconographer if you're becoming catechized. But anyway, maybe you're an artist, whatever. The point is, it's kind of nice to align your life with a saint who pursued a similar interest. It's not necessary. You don't have to do that. But I find that that's useful because you just identify more with that person. And you're more likely to ask that person's prayers. You're more likely to learn about them and take from their life, the good that you can put to use here in this life, in this time, in this 21st century. So anyway, that's my sort of little sermonette on names. I know one of our bishops, he was, let me think now, Paul, actually. He was named Paul. He grew up in a Catholic house, in a Catholic family. He was named Paul, and then when he became Orthodox, he had a different name, begin with an M, and then another name when he became a monk began with an M. That's not uncommon. Then went to Mount Athos and was going to take the Great Schema, so name is going to be changed again. And he was kind of really hoping to get back to Paul, but he didn't. It's okay, whatever. That's life. But in any case, he talked to me a lot about names, and it was always very, I think, interesting and helpful for me. So, okay, I see people are starting to put up questions, and that's great. And you can get me to stop talking about my proclivities about Orthodox names. All right, so let's start here. Let's see the whole thing. It's kind of big. John, is there an Orthodox funeral service or prayers for non-Orthodox? Can Orthodox priests conduct funeral services for non-Orthodox? Non-Orthodox meaning of another Christian denomination or non-denominational. The answer is that there is a service, but generally the clergy do not serve that service. It would be in an extreme situation that an Orthodox priest would do the funeral service, which is very, very sparse. It's very, very simple. It's very, very simple, and it's very, it's very minimal. It's very minimal. It's not sacramental really at all. Like our Orthodox funeral service is quite sacramental if you look at that. It's not considered one of the 7 sacraments of the church, but there's a lot of sacramental things in life in the church, and certainly the funeral service is one of those. But for the non-Orthodox is not. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, and it's meant to be used only essentially when there's no other clergyman available, right? So in our days in America, certainly in any city, that's never going to be used, right? In the time of a pandemic, like a quarantine like this, if you lived in the country, and you were the Orthodox priest was the only clergyman, for miles around, and for some reason you couldn't travel. I mean, I could see how it might be used, but in our days, I would never use it without the bishop's blessing. There's no reason. You don't have to make that kind of decision as a priest on your own, because we can communicate with the bishops, right? Pick up the phone and just call and say, Vladika, what do you think? This is the situation. I've been asked to do this. And the bishop blesses, or he doesn't, and then it's all set. So this is not one of those things that I generally would say. I mean, it is kind of up to the priest. If he couldn't talk to his bishop, he should use his best, his best judgment. But it's something that we would be very unlikely in our days to execute. But like in wartime or in other sort of situations like that, certainly you can see that it could be done, and that's what it's there for, because there may be a time when there is only an Orthodox priest, and somebody dies on a ship, let's say, or something like that. The priest would say the prayers as the person was committed to the ocean or whatever. So yes, the answer is yes, there is one, but it's generally not done. Father Alexei shows us kind of the how it works when you're a monk. He starts as Andrew, then Anthony, and Alexei. Yes, this is how it often works. So since we mentioned that, I might as well tell you there are various practices in the Russian Orthodox Church about how a monastic is named. Right? From just whoever's doing the tonsure chooses the name, that's it. Sometimes the person who is being tonsured is asked to submit 3 names with specific saints that they find inspiring and that they would like to be named after. Doesn't mean that would be the name that was chosen, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's an informal conversation between the bishop or the abbot and the person who's being tonsured. But generally, not always of course, but generally the person who is becoming a monk or a nun is given a name that begins with the first letter of the name that their parents gave them, right? And which essentially aligns with the main obedience that they fulfill in the monastery. So sometimes those things can't be reconciled, and then the obedience tends to win out, what I've sort of noticed over my life in the church here. If it comes down to that, it seems to be more important to give the person a name that aligns with their obedience than it does with the first letter of the name that their parents gave them. But if you can get both, then that's probably what's going to happen. So anyway, that's the general practice in the Russian Orthodox Church. It's not the absolute main practice. There's great diversity in the Russian Orthodox Church in this regard, and in many regards. For instance, the Panikhida service, it has a great variety throughout the great Russian Church, and that's fine. Those are all authentic ways of serving the Panikhida. It's all obvious that it's a Panikhida no matter where you go. And of course, now in our days, these things have become more standardized, but certainly like 100 years ago, 150 years ago, you would have great diversity. And there are different practices in different monasteries, but that's kind of the general trend. So hopefully that helps, folks. All right, so if you have more questions, you can ask them now. And if not, then let's just talk a little bit about what's coming up. We have some really major things happening in the church in these next few weeks. As I mentioned, we have the feasts of St. John the Theologian, that is the evangelist, this Thursday. Then Friday is the spring feast of St. Nicholas. Already Sunday, as I mentioned, is the Sunday of the blind man. Then that Thursday, already, so that's not very far from now, is Ascension. The day before that is the last day of Pascha. Very interesting liturgical day. You could either do the Paschal service again, or just whatever the day is. We do the Pascha service again in Ann Arbor, because how can you ever serve the Pascha service enough? It's a rhetorical question. You couldn't. So anyway, it's like a Bright Week service, so really beautiful, and all the Paschal verses, and just lovely. So that's that Wednesday. The Thursday is Ascension. Then we go through that funny 10 days where when we begin our prayers in the morning, neither do we say, O Heavenly King, neither do we say Christ is risen 3 times. We just go right to Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us. Or you could always say the Troparion of Ascension, but officially you don't. You just, through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us for 10 days until we get to Pentecost, when you begin to say, O Heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of Truth, for the entire rest of the year until we get to Pascha again. So that's kind of a little preview of what's coming up until we get to Pentecost. And beginning of June has a lot of good services too, like St. Constantine and Helen is there, and so it's a really nice, robust time in the church when we have a lot of saints that people have a lot of veneration for, and I think it's very nice. It's a very nice time of year. Spring is coming, a lot of lovely feasts, and then of course we get to our Apostles' Fast, not the day after Pentecost, but the day after the next Sunday, which is a Sunday of All Saints. Then the next day is the beginning of the Apostles' Fast. Question about the Russian festival this summer in Ann Arbor. That's a great question, John. That is a great question. The answer is, we certainly hope so. We'll have to choose kind of a hard date at which we either go or don't go. Our inclination right now is a go, but we can't announce for sure that that's going to happen. to gather that many people. I mean, we're talking about thousands of people. Of course, probably it would be fewer this year because of the people are of course concerned about the virus. But so we're trying to figure out a way that we can make that happen. So the answer is we sure hope so. And probably in this next week or two, we're going to set a hard date at which we'll make an announcement one way or the other. But we think that we can do it. At this point, if the trajectory of the cases in Michigan stays the same, continues to go down, considering it's essentially an outdoor event, and that we expect the cases would continue to go down in the summer, throughout the summer, we have a lot of hope that we can do it, but we just aren't ready to say absolutely yes quite yet, because it's a big investment, as I'm sure you understand. We put a lot into that, a lot of resources in every sense of that term, time, talent, and treasure. A lot of investment of treasure goes into that, so we want to make sure that it's really going to happen before we invest all of those resources. So the answer is we hope. We hope, and we ask your prayers for that, because we think it's an important event. It is helpful for our parish on many levels. We do make some money, and that's good. Nothing wrong with that. But it's also a really great way for us to introduce the Orthodox faith to people in a really non-threatening way. And just about every year, new people come to the church after they've been able to kind of touch the church a little bit in that way. So it's an important missionary effort for us too. So we are really hoping that that's going to work out well. And speaking of which, we're thinking about St. Vladimir's Day too, which is a couple months before that, and how that's going to work. We're thinking that a lot of the services are going to be outside. As the weather gets nicer. Today we're kind of in a Noah's Ark kind of rain here in Michigan, but hopefully that's the last of the really huge ones. And as the weather continues to get nicer, we think that we're going to do more and more services outside. So it's all kind of coming together as we go, but with God's help and everyone's prayers, we hope that we're going to be able to do some good this summer, and hopefully we'll be able to have the Russian festival also. All right, good. So we're about a half an hour in, and usually we go about 40 minutes, and that's okay. It's good to go 40 minutes if we can, and we have enough questions. And if we don't, then we end early. And so I think we're going to end early tonight, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So let's pray, and then we will say goodnight until next Monday. Shine, shine, O New Jerusalem, for the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. Dance now and be glad, O Zion, and do thou exult, O most pure Theotokos, in the arising of him whom thou didst bear. Christ is risen, everyone. Good night. We ask your prayers.